When my daughter-in-law banned me from our annual family reunion by text message, I knew I'd reached my breaking point. When I showed up anyway and revealed to 57 relatives exactly why she'd been systematically isolating me for the past 3 years, I never imagined that by sunset, I'd be comforting her while she confessed the real reason behind her behavior, a secret that would change how our entire family understood the meaning of protection and sacrifice. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. This photograph was taken at last year's reunion, the final one I attended before the ban. There's Rachel, my daughter-in-law, standing stiffly beside me as we cut the traditional family cake, her smile tight and forced. Everyone else thought we were the picture of family harmony, but I'd already noticed the subtle ways she was beginning her campaign of exclusion. My grandmother used to say, when someone tries to separate you from your family, they're either protecting you or controlling you. The difference is in what they're willing to sacrifice. Her words echoed in my mind as I reread Rachel's message for the 10th time. Due to past conflicts, it's best if you don't attend this year's reunion. I'm sure you understand. After retiring from my position as school principal, I'd looked forward to spending more time with my son Tom and his family. We'd always been close. Weekly dinners, holiday traditions, spontaneous visits. But after Rachel joined our family 4 years ago, things began to shift. The weekly dinners became monthly. My invitations to the grandchildren's school events mysteriously got lost. Little by little, Rachel was rewriting our family dynamics. I remember the exact moment I first noticed something was wrong. It was at Lucy's 5th birthday party, 18 months after Tom and Rachel's wedding. I arrived with the doll I'd carefully chosen, the same kind I'd given to all my granddaughters on their 5th birthdays, a family tradition spanning 3 generations. Rachel's smile faltered when she saw it. "Oh, Evelyn," she said loudly enough for other guests to hear. "I thought I mentioned we're trying to move away from gender-specific toys. But thank you anyway." She took the doll and placed it on a table, with other gifts, but I later learned it never made it home with Lucy. The pattern continued at Christmas. Rachel insisted on hosting at their house but gave me the wrong time. I arrived 2 hours late to find everyone already eating dessert. "Oh no, Evelyn. Didn't you get my text about the time change?" she asked innocently. There was no text on my phone. Each incident seemed small, explainable, even reasonable when viewed in isolation. But as they accumulated, the picture became clear. Rachel was systematically pushing me to the periphery of my own family. The warning signs multiplied when Rachel took over organizing the annual Wilson family reunion. For 43 years, the reunion had been held at my sister Martha's farm, a sprawling property with enough space for our ever-growing clan to camp, barbecue, and reconnect. We'd start with a potluck featuring recipes passed down through generations, followed by storytelling hour where the elders shared family history with the younger ones. "We need to modernize things, Evelyn," Rachel announced at a family planning meeting. "Make it more appealing to the younger generation." Her voice dripped with condescension, as if our traditions were quaint relics rather than the threads that bound us together. First, she changed the venue to a sterile community center downtown. "More convenient for everyone," she claimed, though it meant our elderly relatives had to navigate busy streets and paid parking instead of Martha's welcoming driveway. Then she altered the schedule, eliminating our traditional storytelling hour and family recipe exchange in favor of structured activities and catered food. "But the recipes are our heritage," I protested mildly during one planning session. Rachel's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Times change, Evelyn. We can't live in the past forever." What Rachel didn't know was that I had allies within the extended family. My niece Sarah, always observant, had been documenting the changes. "Aunt Evelyn, have you seen the new family directory Rachel created?" she called me one evening. You're listed at the very back, with your name misspelled, and your photo. It's from that day you had the flu. Everyone else has professional headshots. Sarah texted me screenshots from the reunion planning group chat I hadn't been invited to join. There was Rachel, suggesting improvements that systematically erased decades of tradition. She'd even proposed eliminating the annual family photo because it takes too long to organize. The crisis came when I received her text banning me from the reunion. My hands trembled as I read, "Due to past conflicts, it's best if you don't attend this year's reunion. I'm sure you understand." Past conflicts? The only conflicts I could recall were the times I'd quietly deflected her attempts to marginalize me. Like when she tried to replace our family's traditional Christmas Eve dinner with a trendy vegan menu, or when she suggested we stop displaying old family photos because they didn't match the aesthetic. I immediately called Tom, my heart pounding. "Mom," he answered, his voice already defensive. "Tom, I just received a message from Rachel saying I'm not welcome at the reunion." He sighed heavily. "I know. Dad's handling it. Rachel says you've been too critical, undermining her role in the family." "Critical? Tom, when have I ever criticized her publicly? Ask your father. I've held my tongue even when she scheduled your daughter's birthday party during my hip surgery recovery." "I know, Mom," he said wearily. "But she's my wife. I have to support her. Maybe it's best if you sit this one out, let things cool down." His words cut deeper than Rachel's text. My own son, the boy I'd raised to value family above all else, was choosing sides, and it wasn't mine. That night, unable to sleep, I made a decision that went against everything I'd taught my students about diplomacy and conflict resolution. I pulled out my laptop and began composing an email to all 57 members of our extended family. The cursor blinked accusingly at me. "Dear family," I wrote, then deleted it. Too formal. "I need to tell you something important about this." "Year's reunion?" I tried again, then stopped. Was I really going to do this? Air family grievances like dirty laundry? My mother's voice echoed in my head. "Family matters stay in the family." But another voice, my grandmother's, whispered, "Sunlight is the best disinfectant." My friend Dorothy found me at 3 a.m., still, staring at the blank screen. She'd let herself in with her spare key, a habit we'd developed after both becoming widows within months of each other. "Evelyn Wilson, what are you doing up at this hour?" she demanded, then saw my tear-stained face. "Oh, honey, what's happened?" I showed her Rachel's text. Dorothy read it, her expression darkening with each word. "That manipulative little—" She caught herself. "I never liked how she's been treating you, Evelyn. Always with that fake smile, making backhanded comments about your old-fashioned ways." "I don't know what to do, Dorothy. If I go along with this, I'm accepting my exile from my own family. But if I fight it—" "You're overthinking this," she said, reading over my shoulder. "Just tell the truth." The truth could destroy my relationship with my son. Dorothy sat beside me, taking my hand. "Honey, that relationship is already changing whether you fight it or not. The question is, what are you willing to lose to keep the peace?" Her words crystallized something I'd been avoiding. This wasn't just about me anymore. Rachel's behavior was affecting the entire family dynamic, creating divisions where none had existed before. I'd heard from Martha that Rachel had been subtly criticizing other family members too, telling Cousin Janet her children were undisciplined, suggesting Uncle Robert's stories were inappropriate for mixed company. With Dorothy's encouragement, I finally wrote my email. "Dear family, I've been asked not to attend this year's reunion. Before you arrive at the community center on Saturday, there are things you should know about what's been happening within our family. I've remained silent out of respect for my son's marriage, but silence has only allowed the situation to worsen. For the past 3 years, Rachel has been systematically limiting my access to my son and grandchildren. Events I've missed include Lucy's kindergarten graduation, James's soccer championship, Tom's promotion celebration, and most recently, my own grandson's baptism, for which I received the invitation 2 days after the ceremony. I've documented 17 instances of scheduling conflicts that prevented my participation in family events, as well as numerous examples of altered family photos where I've been cropped out or placed at the margins. I understand this email may seem dramatic, but I believe transparency is necessary. I will be attending the reunion tomorrow, and I hope we can discuss this situation as the loving family we've always been. With love, Evelyn. I hit send at 4:17 a.m., my hands shaking so badly I could barely close the laptop. By morning, my phone was exploding with messages. Some supportive, others shocked, a few angry. Martha called immediately. "Evelyn, I had no idea it was this bad. We're all talking about it. This explains so much." But the one message that mattered most came from Tom. "Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over before the reunion?" As I drove to Tom's house, prepared for a confrontation that might end our relationship, I couldn't have imagined the scene that awaited me. Rachel, the woman who'd been my nemesis for 3 years, would be waiting on the porch with red-rimmed eyes and a truth that would reshape everything I thought I knew about our family conflict. The morning air was thick with humidity as I pulled into Tom's driveway, my heart pounding with each step toward their Victorian home. Rachel was indeed on the porch, but she wasn't alone. Tom sat beside her, his face drawn and tired, while their children played quietly in the yard, an unusual sight for my normally boisterous grandchildren. "Mom," Tom stood as I approached. "Thanks for coming." Rachel remained seated, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. For the first time in 3 years, she looked vulnerable, stripped of the polished exterior she usually presented. "Before you say anything," I began, "I want you to know that I didn't send that email to hurt anyone. I just couldn't stay silent anymore." "We know," Tom said softly, glancing at his wife. "Rachel has something to tell you." Rachel lifted her head, and I was startled to see genuine fear in her eyes. "Evelyn, I owe you an explanation, and an apology." Her voice trembled. "But first, I need to know. Did you notice anyone unusual around you lately? Anyone following you, or strange calls?" The question caught me completely off guard. "What? No, I don't think so. Why would you ask that?" Rachel exchanged a loaded look with Tom before continuing. "6 months before we got married, I testified against my stepfather in a fraud case. He was involved with some very dangerous people, money laundering, connections to organized crime. He went to prison, but his associates—" She swallowed. Hard. "They made threats. Against me, against anyone close to me." My mind reeled as I processed her words. "Rachel, what are you saying?" "The witness protection program wouldn't take me because the threats weren't deemed credible enough," she continued, tears now flowing freely. But I knew better. These people don't make empty threats. When I married Tom, I was terrified they'd target his family to get to me. Tom reached for her hand. "She didn't tell me any of this until last night, after your email came through." 3 years ago, Rachel's voice grew stronger. "I got a call. A man said they knew where Tom's mother lived. You, Evelyn. He described your house, your car, your routine. He said if I didn't want anything to happen to my sweet mother-in-law, I should remember who my real family was." The blood drained from my face as understanding dawned. "So you started pushing me away?" "To protect you," Rachel nodded. "I thought if I created distance between us, if it looked like we had a bad relationship, they'd have no reason to use you as leverage. Every time I excluded you from something, scheduled events you couldn't attend, it killed me inside. But I thought it was the only way to keep you safe." I sank onto the porch swing, trying to reconcile this revelation with years of perceived slights and exclusions. But the family reunion, why ban me completely? Rachel's face crumpled. 2 weeks ago, I saw someone watching your house. The same man who approached me at the grocery store last year, asking questions about you. I panicked. I thought if I could just keep you away from the reunion, away from any large family gathering where you'd be vulnerable. She was trying to protect all of us, Tom added. But she was too afraid to tell anyone the truth. The sound of tires on gravel interrupted our conversation. A black SUV pulled up behind my car, and 2 people in dark suits emerged. My stomach lurched with fear until I saw Tom relax slightly. "Right on time," he murmured. The agents introduced themselves as part of a federal task force that had been monitoring Rachel's stepfather's associates. "Mrs. Wilson," the female agent addressed me. "We've been aware of the situation for some time. Rachel should have come to us sooner, but we understand her fear." "Are we in danger?" I asked, my mind immediately going to my grandchildren playing nearby. "Not anymore," the male agent assured us. "We arrested 3 individuals last night, including the man who's been surveilling your home. Rachel's testimony, combined with new evidence we've gathered, will put them away for a long time." As the agents continued explaining the situation, I watched Rachel, really looked at her for the first time. Beneath the controlling behavior I'd resented, I saw a young woman who had been carrying an impossible burden alone, sacrificing her own reputation to protect a family she'd grown to love. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked when the agents left to secure the perimeter. "I couldn't risk it," Rachel whispered. "These people have connections everywhere. The fewer people who knew, the safer everyone would be. Or so I thought." "She didn't even tell me," Tom added, pain evident in his voice. "She's been living with this fear alone for years." The morning sun climbed higher as we sat on that porch, unraveling 3 years of misunderstandings. Rachel explained every incident. The birthday party during my surgery had been deliberately planned to keep me away from a family gathering where she'd spotted a suspicious car. The wrong time for Christmas dinner came after she'd received a threatening note. Even the changed reunion venue was an attempt to move the event to a more secure location. "The family photos," I suddenly remembered. "You cropped me out?" Rachel's laugh was hollow. "I was trying to minimize your presence in any family documentation that might be seen online. I thought if you seemed unimportant to us, they'd leave. You alone." She paused. "The photo in the directory, the one where you looked sick? I chose it because I thought it made you look vulnerable, like someone not worth targeting." Each revelation felt like a knife twisting in my heart. Not from hurt anymore, but from guilt. I'd judged her so harshly, assumed the worst about her intentions, when she'd been fighting a battle I knew nothing about. "Your grandmother's saying," Rachel continued, "about protection versus control? I heard you mention it once at dinner. It stuck with me because I knew I was controlling everything, but I was doing it to protect. I handled it all wrong." The sound of multiple cars arriving drew our attention. Family members were showing up: Martha, Sarah, cousins, aunts, uncles, all having received word that something important was happening at Tom's house. "You told them to come?" I asked Tom. He nodded. "After your email, after Rachel finally told me everything, I realized the whole family needs to know the truth. We can't fix 3 years of misunderstandings with secrets." As our relatives gathered in the large backyard, I saw Rachel steel herself for what was coming. The woman who had seemed so controlling, so manipulative, now looked small and frightened. "They'll understand," I found myself saying, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We're family. That's what we do." The impromptu family meeting was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Rachel, with trembling voice but remarkable courage, told her story from the beginning. She explained about her stepfather, the trial, the threats, and her misguided attempts to protect the family by creating distance. The reactions varied: shock, anger at being kept in the dark, sympathy for Rachel's situation, and guilt from those who, like me, had harbored resentment toward her. Martha was the first to embrace Rachel, followed by Sarah, then others, until my daughter-in-law was surrounded by the very family she'd tried to push away. "You should have told us," Uncle Robert said gruffly, his eyes suspiciously bright. "We would have protected you. That's what family does." "I see that now," Rachel replied. "I was so used to handling everything alone. I forgot what it means to have a real family." As the morning turned to afternoon, plans began to form. The reunion would go ahead, but at Martha's farm as tradition dictated, with the federal agents providing discreet security. We would face any remaining threats together, as a family united rather than divided. Watching Rachel interact with everyone, seeing her walls finally come down, I was struck by a profound realization. Sometimes the behaviors we find most hurtful in others stem from pain we can't see. Rachel hadn't been trying to destroy our family. She'd been trying to save it, just in the most misguided way possible. The children, sensing the shift in atmosphere, had gradually joined the adults. Lucy climbed into Rachel's lap, and I saw my daughter-in-law hold her daughter with a new kind of freedom, no longer burdened by the fear that had haunted her for years. "Grandma," Lucy called to me, "Mommy says you can come to everything now. Every birthday, every soccer game, everything." "Is that right?" I asked, meeting Rachel's eyes over Lucy's head. "Everything," Rachel confirmed, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn, for all of it. You deserved so much better from me." "We both deserve better," I replied. "A fresh start, maybe?" She nodded, unable to speak through her tears. In that moment, surrounded by 3 generations of Wilsons, I understood that family isn't just about blood or marriage certificates. It's about choosing to understand rather than judge, to forgive rather than resent, and to protect each other, even when that protection is imperfect and misguided. As we prepared to move the impromptu gathering to the community center for the official reunion, I found myself walking beside Rachel. "Your grandmother's wisdom," she said quietly. "About protection versus control? I think I finally understand. The difference. Protection means trusting the people you're protecting to help carry the burden. And control?" I asked. "Control means thinking you have to carry it all alone," she finished. That afternoon, as 6 Wilsons gathered at the community center, the atmosphere was different from any reunion before. There was an honesty in the air, a vulnerability, that brought us closer than any potluck dinner or family photo ever had. Rachel had arranged for the traditional elements I'd thought she'd eliminated: the storytelling hour, the recipe exchange, even the family photo that would now include everyone, with no one cropped out or pushed to the margins. But the most significant moment came during the storytelling hour, when Rachel stood up to share not a family legend or funny anecdote, but her own story of fear, misguided protection, and ultimately, the power of truth and family unity. As she spoke, I realized that this year's reunion would be remembered not for its location or activities, but for the moment when our family chose understanding over judgment, when we learned that sometimes the greatest threats to family unity come not from external forces, but from our own assumptions and silence. The federal agents remained discreetly present throughout the event, a reminder of the very real danger Rachel had faced. But their presence also symbolized something else, that we were no longer fighting shadows alone. We were facing our challenges together, as a family should. That evening, as the reunion wound down and families began to depart, Rachel approached me one last time. "Evelyn, would you consider helping me plan next year's reunion? I'd like to bring back all the traditions I tried to change. I want to learn about them properly this time." Looking at her hopeful face, I saw not the daughter-in-law who had excluded me, but a young woman who had found her way home after being lost in fear for far too long. "I'd like that very much," I replied. And for the first time in 3 years, we embraced not as adversaries, but as family. The week following the reunion revelation was a whirlwind of activity. Federal agents maintained surveillance around our homes while building their case against Rachel's stepfather's associates. But it was the emotional surveillance, the careful observation of our family dynamics shifting and healing, that occupied most of my thoughts. Rachel and Tom invited me for dinner that Thursday, a simple gesture that carried profound meaning after years of exclusion. As I drove to their house, I reflected on how quickly circumstances can change when truth finally comes to light. "Evelyn," Rachel greeted me at the door, still using my formal name but with genuine warmth now. "I'm so glad you came." The house felt different, lighter somehow, as if the weight of secrets had been physically lifting the roof. Lucy and James ran to hug me, their embraces unrestricted by their mother's previous fears. "Grandma, look!" Lucy pulled me toward the living room. "Mommy put all your pictures back." Indeed, the family photos that had been carefully curated to minimize my presence were now properly displayed. The mantelpiece showcased a chronological journey of our family, with me rightfully included in every milestone. During dinner, conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years. Rachel asked questions about family traditions, genuinely interested in the stories behind them, rather than dismissing them as outdated. "I never knew Great Aunt Mabel started the reunion tradition during the Depression," she said, after I shared the origin story. "She used it as a way to make sure everyone in the family had at least one good meal that month." "Every tradition has a story," I replied. "That's what makes them precious." Tom watched our interaction with visible relief. Later, while Rachel put the children to bed, he and I sat on the back porch, the evening air filled with cricket songs. "Mom, I owe you an apology too," he began. "I should have seen what was happening. The signs were there." Rachel's anxiety, her insistence on controlling everything, the way she'd change the subject whenever I questioned her decisions about family events. "You trusted your wife," I said gently. "That's what you're supposed to do." "But I stopped trusting you," he countered. "I let her convince me that you were being difficult, that you couldn't accept her place in the family. I should have known better." We sat in contemplative silence until Tom spoke again. "Did you know she's been having nightmares? For years. She'd wake up screaming but would never tell me why. Now I understand. She was dreaming about something happening to you, to the kids, to all of us." The magnitude of Rachel's burden became clearer with each revelation. A young woman, traumatized by her stepfather's criminal activities, trying to build a normal life while living in constant fear of retribution. Her methods were flawed, but her intentions had been protective all along. The next morning, I received an unexpected call from Special Agent Martinez, the lead investigator on Rachel's case. "Mrs. Wilson, we'd like you to come to the federal building this afternoon. We have some information that concerns you directly." My stomach knotted with anxiety as I drove downtown. In a sterile conference room, Agent Martinez laid out a series of surveillance photos. "These were taken over the past 3 years," she explained. "Your daughter-in-law was right to be concerned. The photos showed me in various locations: grocery, shopping, walking in the park, entering the library where I volunteered. In each image, the same man lurked in the background, sometimes in a car, sometimes on foot. We've identified him as Victor Kozlov, a known associate of Rachel's stepfather. He was assigned to monitor you, to use as leverage if Rachel ever considered testifying again." My hands trembled as I examined the photos. All those times I'd felt perfectly safe, oblivious to the danger that had been shadowing me. "There's more," Agent Martinez continued. "We found detailed notes about your routines, your friends, even your medical appointments. They were building a comprehensive profile." "But why me specifically?" I asked. Why not Tom or the children? You were seen as the matriarch, the heart of the family. They believed threatening you would have the maximum emotional impact on Rachel. She paused. They were also aware of your health issues. I stiffened. My health issues? Agent Martinez looked uncomfortable. Your heart condition, the medication you take, they had plans to make any potential action against you look like natural causes. The room spun as the full horror of what Rachel had been protecting me from became clear. This wasn't just about keeping me away from family gatherings. It was about keeping me alive. That evening, I called an emergency family meeting. Everyone gathered at Martha's farmhouse, the traditional heart of our clan. Rachel sat beside me on the old leather couch, our proximity a testament to how much had changed. I need to share something with all of you, I began, then detailed what I'd learned from Agent Martinez. The room erupted in shock and outrage. Martha grabbed my hand, squeezing it tightly. Those bastards, she whispered fiercely. Rachel began to shake beside me. This is why, she said, her voice barely audible. This is why I did everything I did. They told me. They said they could make it look like an accident. Your heart. Tom knelt before his wife, taking her hands. You carried this alone for so long. No more secrets, okay? We face everything as a family now. Uncle Robert, our family's self-appointed protector since my husband passed, stood up. I propose we establish a family security protocol. We look out for each other, report anything suspicious, and make sure no one faces threats alone again. The suggestion was met with unanimous agreement. Over the next hour, we developed a comprehensive plan, a phone tree for emergencies, regular check-ins, and a shared digital calendar that would ensure everyone knew where family members were supposed to be. I have something else to share, Rachel said when we'd finished planning. She retrieved a large envelope from her bag. These are letters I wrote to each of you over the past 3 years. Things I wanted to say but couldn't. I'd like you to read them, to understand what was really in my heart during that time. She handed me my envelope first. Inside were dozens of letters, dated throughout the years of our estrangement. I opened the earliest one. Dear Evelyn, today I deliberately scheduled Lucy's recital during your book club because I saw that man parked outside your house again. I hate myself for doing this. You should be there to see your granddaughter perform. You should be proud in the front row, not hurt and excluded. I wish I could explain, but I can't risk it. Please know that every time I push you away, it breaks my heart. You're the mother I always wished I had, and keeping you at arm's length is the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm so sorry. I hope someday you'll understand and forgive me, Rachel. Tears blurred my vision as I read letter after letter, each one revealing the agony behind Rachel's actions. The room fell silent as others read their own letters, the only sounds being occasional sniffles and the rustle of paper. Sarah looked up from her letter, eyes wet. Rachel, you wrote that you were sorry for criticizing my parenting. You said you did it hoping I'd distance myself and my kids from family gatherings. I thought if I made everyone uncomfortable around me, you'd all naturally stay away, Rachel admitted. It seemed safer than the truth. As the evening progressed, the full scope of Rachel's sacrifice became clear. She had methodically alienated family members, not out of malice or a desire for control, but from a desperate need to protect us all. She had made herself the villain in our family story, accepting our resentment as the price of our safety. There's one more thing, Tom said, as the night grew late. The federal prosecutor has offered Rachel a deal. If she testifies in the upcoming trial against her stepfather's organization, they'll provide official witness protection for our immediate family. The room fell silent as we absorbed this news. But that means, Martha began. We'd have to relocate, Tom confirmed. New identities, no contact with extended family for an undetermined period. No, Rachel said firmly, surprising everyone. I won't do that to this family, not again. I won't tear us apart, not even for safety. Rachel, I interjected. If it's necessary, it's not, she insisted. Agent Martinez told me they've gathered enough evidence through their surveillance of Victor and others. My testimony would be helpful but not crucial. I've spent 3 years isolating myself and hurting all of you in the name of protection. I won't make that mistake again. The discussion continued late into the night, weighing options and concerns. Finally, Uncle Robert voiced what many were thinking. Whatever you decide, we support you. But Rachel, you need to trust us to help protect our family. No more going it alone. Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm learning that real family means sharing the burdens, not shouldering them alone. As the meeting concluded, I found myself alone with Rachel in Martha's kitchen, both of us making tea in the comfortable silence that comes after emotional exhaustion. Evelyn, she said softly, I need to ask you something. In your letter, the email you sent to everyone, you mentioned documenting 17 instances of exclusion. Do you still have that list? I hesitated before answering. Yes, I do. Why? I'd like to make amends for each one, she said. Not just apologize, but actively make up for what you missed. Lucy's kindergarten graduation, we could have a special ceremony. James's soccer championship. Maybe we could organize a family game. I want to create new memories to help heal the wounds I caused. Her sincerity touched me deeply. That's not necessary, Rachel. Understanding why you did it is enough. Please, she insisted. Let me do this. It's important for my healing too. Looking at her earnest face, I realized this was about more than making amends. It was about Rachel reclaiming her role in our family on honest terms. All right, I agreed. But on one condition. We do it together. No more you carrying everything alone. She smiled through fresh tears. Together. The next month became a series of do-overs and new beginnings. We held a belated kindergarten graduation for Lucy in my backyard, complete with caps and gowns. The entire family attended James's soccer rematch, cheering wildly as he scored the winning goal. Tom's promotion was re-celebrated with a dinner where everyone shared stories of his professional journey, but the most meaningful event was the renewal of Rachel and Tom's vows, held at Martha's farm on a crisp autumn afternoon. This time there were no secrets, no hidden fears, just two people committing to each other with full honesty and the support of their entire family. As Rachel recited her vows, she looked directly at me. I promised to trust in the strength of our family, to share my fears instead of letting them isolate me, and to honor the traditions that bind us together across generations. Agent Martinez attended the ceremony, bringing news that Victor Kozlov and his associates had been arrested in a multi-state operation. The threat that had loomed over Rachel for years was finally neutralized. During the reception, I found myself watching Rachel dance with the children, her laughter genuine and unguarded. Martha joined me, linking her arm through mine. You know, she said, sometimes the worst situations bring out the best in people. Look at her. She's finally free. We all are, I replied, thinking of how secrets and misunderstandings had imprisoned us all in different ways. As the sun set over the farm, casting golden light across the gathering, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From exclusion to inclusion, from resentment to understanding, from division to unity. Our family had emerged stronger from the crucible of crisis. The traditional family photo was taken just before dusk, all 57 of us arranged on the farmhouse steps. But this year, there was a new tradition. Rachel stood at the center with me, our arms around each other, surrounded by the family we both fought to protect in our own ways. Later that evening, as guests departed and the children slept peacefully, in the farmhouse, Rachel and I sat on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the darkness. "Evelyn," she said quietly, "I've been thinking about your grandmother's saying, about protection versus control. And what have you concluded? That sometimes the line between them is thinner than we think. But the key difference is trust. Protection with trust brings people together. Control, even with good intentions, pushes them apart." I nodded, appreciating her insight. "You've learned that the hard way." "We both have," she replied. "But maybe that's what family is, learning the hard lessons together and coming out stronger on the other side." As we swung gently in the cool night air, I realized that our family's story had become something larger than any of us had anticipated. It was a testament to the power of truth, the importance of trust, and the incredible resilience of family bonds. Rachel's misguided protection had nearly torn us apart, but in facing the truth together, we had forged something unbreakable. The Wilson family reunion would never be the same after that year. Not because of changed venues or modernized traditions, but because we had learned that true family unity isn't about perfect harmony. It's about facing imperfect realities together, with honesty, forgiveness, and unwavering support. And as for the letter Rachel had written me the night before the reunion, the one I'd found in my mailbox after everything had been revealed, I kept it in my bedside drawer, a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of love come disguised as acts of rejection, and that understanding someone's heart requires looking beyond their actions to the fears that drive them. Family protects. Family, Rachel had written in that final letter. Even when that protection looks like abandonment, I hope someday you'll understand that pushing you away was the only way I knew to keep you close to my heart. Now, sitting beside her in the peaceful darkness, I finally did understand. And in that understanding, our family found its way back to wholeness. 3 months after the revelation, our family had settled into a new normal, but the echoes of those 3 difficult years continued to surface in unexpected ways. I was folding laundry one quiet Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Wilson? This is Dr. Patricia Hernandez from Memorial Hospital. Your daughter-in-law, Rachel, listed you as her emergency contact. She's been admitted to our psychiatric unit." My heart stuttered. "Is she... What happened?" "She's stable," the doctor assured me. "But she experienced what appears to be a severe anxiety attack. Given your family relationship, we thought you should know she's asking for you." I rushed to the hospital, calling Tom on the way. He was in a meeting 2 hours away and couldn't leave immediately. "I should have seen this coming," he said, voice thick with worry. "She's been having trouble sleeping again. The trial date was announced last week." The psychiatric wing was quieter than the main hospital, with soft lighting and muted colors designed to soothe. I found Rachel in a private room, looking small and fragile in the hospital bed. Her usual composed appearance was gone. Her hair, disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, hands trembling slightly as she reached for mine. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want to worry anyone." "Oh, Rachel." I sat beside her, taking her cold hands in mine. "What happened?" The story tumbled out in fragments. The federal prosecutor had called that morning, informing her that her stepfather's trial would begin in 6 weeks. Despite their assurances that her testimony wasn't crucial, they wanted her to appear as a character witness, to describe the fear and control he had wielded over her family. "I thought I was past this," Rachel said, tears flowing freely. "But hearing his name, knowing I might have to see him again, suddenly I couldn't breathe. The walls started closing in. I kept seeing Victor's face outside your house, imagining what could have happened to you, to the children." Dr. Hernandez joined us, explaining that Rachel had been experiencing panic attacks for years, but had hidden them, just as she'd hidden everything else. "The human mind can only compartmentalize trauma for so long," she said. "Eventually, it demands to be processed." Over the next few days, as Rachel underwent intensive therapy, more truth emerged. She had been self-medicating with anxiety medication obtained through a friend, terrified that seeking proper help would somehow alert her stepfather's associates to her vulnerability. The weight of her secrets had manifested in physical symptoms, chronic headaches, insomnia, digestive issues, all of which she'd hidden from Tom. "I became so good at hiding things," she told me during one of my daily visits. "I convinced myself that if I could just control everything, keep everyone at the right distance, we'd all be safe. But I was dying inside, Evelyn. Every time I pushed you away, every family event I sabotaged, it felt like I was poisoning my own soul." Tom took a leave of absence from work to be with Rachel, and I moved temporarily into their home to care for the children. Lucy and James, perceptive as children often are, knew something was wrong with their mother, but handled it with remarkable grace. "Is Mommy sick because she was trying to protect us?" Lucy asked one evening as I tucked her into bed. "In a way, yes," I answered carefully. "Sometimes when people carry too many worries alone, their bodies and minds need a rest. Like when I tried to carry all the grocery bags by myself and dropped everything?" she asked. Her simple analogy struck me as profound. "Exactly like that, sweetheart." During Rachel's hospitalization, the family rallied in ways that would have been impossible during the years of secrecy. Martha organized meal deliveries. Sarah created a schedule for childcare assistance. Uncle Robert installed security cameras around the house, not because we feared immediate danger, but because visible security helped Rachel feel safer. The most surprising support came from unexpected quarters. Several relatives who had been hurt by Rachel's past behavior sent cards and flowers. Cousin Janet, whom Rachel had once criticized harshly, wrote a particularly moving note. "Dear Rachel, I understand now that your harsh words came from a place of fear, not judgment. I forgive you completely and want you to know that you're not alone anymore. We're all here for you. Love, Janet." As Rachel's recovery progressed, family therapy became part of her treatment. Tom and I attended sessions together, learning about the long-term effects of living under threat, the psychology of hypervigilance, and the healing power of shared vulnerability. Rachel's actions, while misguided, were a form of complex trauma response, Dr. Hernandez explained. She developed what we call a protector persona, someone who controls situations to prevent perceived dangers. The challenge now is helping her feel safe enough to let go of that control. 2 weeks into her treatment, Rachel made a breakthrough during a group therapy session. She called me afterward, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in days. "Evelyn, I realized something today. All those times I pushed you away, I was really pushing away the mother I never had. My own mother enabled my stepfather's behavior. Never protected me. When I married Tom and gained you as a mother-in-law, it terrified me. I couldn't bear the thought of losing another mother figure, so I rejected you first." Her insight opened new avenues for healing. We began having long conversations about motherhood, protection, and the intricate dance between caring for others and allowing them to care for us. As Rachel's release date approached, the family prepared for her homecoming. But it wasn't the typical welcome home preparations. Under Dr. Hernandez's guidance, we created what she called a safety net plan, a structured approach to supporting Rachel's continued recovery while respecting her autonomy. The plan included regular family check-ins, continued therapy, and, most importantly, a commitment to open communication. No more secrets, no more suffering in silence. Rachel returned home on a sunny Thursday, looking stronger but still fragile around the edges. The children had made welcome banners, and the house smelled of her favorite lasagna. But the most meaningful moment came that evening, after the children were asleep. Rachel, Tom, and I sat in their living room, the same room where years of distance had been maintained through subtle exclusions and manufactured conflicts. Now, it felt different, warmer, more honest. I have something for you, Rachel said, handing me a leather-bound journal. My therapist suggested I write letters to everyone. I hurt. But yours became something more. I opened the journal to find pages filled with Rachel's neat handwriting. It wasn't just letters. It was a complete chronicle of her internal struggle, dated entries spanning 3 years of fear, guilt, and paradoxical love. One entry from 2. Years ago read, Evelyn brought Lucy a handmade quilt today for her birthday. I had to pretend I forgot to invite her to the party. The look in her eyes broke my heart. I went to the bathroom and sobbed for 20 minutes. The quilt is beautiful. It has Lucy's favorite storybook characters embroidered on each square. How does she always know exactly what will mean the most? Why can't I let myself accept this love? Why am I so broken that I have to destroy the very thing I want most? A real mother's love? Reading her words, seeing the depth of her struggle laid bare, I felt the last vestiges of hurt dissolve. This wasn't just about forgiveness anymore. It was about understanding the profound complexity of trauma and the courage it takes to heal. The trial date arrived 6 weeks later. Despite her progress, Rachel was visibly anxious as we prepared for court. The federal prosecutors had ultimately decided her testimony wasn't necessary for conviction, but Rachel had chosen to testify anyway. I need to face him, she explained. Not for the case, but for myself. I need to look him in the eye and show him he doesn't control me anymore. The entire family attended the trial, filling 2 rows in the courtroom. Rachel's stepfather, a man I'd never seen but had imagined countless times, looked smaller than the monster I'd pictured. Balding, ordinary, wearing an ill-fitting suit. He seemed diminished by the institutional setting. Rachel took the stand with remarkable composure. As she described years of psychological manipulation, financial control, and the constant threat of violence that had shaped her young adulthood, I saw several jurors wiping their eyes. And how did these experiences affect your relationships after you left home? The prosecutor asked. Rachel looked directly at her stepfather as she answered. I became trapped in a cycle of fear. I pushed away the very people who could have helped me heal, especially my mother-in-law, Evelyn. I was so afraid of losing the family I'd gained through marriage that I created elaborate barriers to protect them. In doing so, I nearly destroyed the relationships I was trying to preserve. Her testimony lasted 2 hours. When she finished, she walked past the defense table without a glance at her stepfather and came straight to where I sat. We embraced in the middle of the courtroom, both of us crying, as the judge called for a brief recess. The trial concluded with multiple convictions. Rachel's stepfather received a 25-year sentence for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy. Viktor Kozlov and his associates were also convicted, effectively dismantling the criminal network that had threatened our family. That evening, we held an impromptu celebration at Martha's farm. It wasn't a victory party. The cost had been too high for that, but rather a marking of closure, a celebration of survival and resilience. Rachel stood to make a toast, her glass of sparkling cider. She was still on medication that precluded alcohol, raised high. To family, she began, her voice steady. Not just the family we're born into, but the family we choose and the family that chooses us back, even when we make it difficult. She turned to me specifically, to Evelyn, who showed me that a mother's love doesn't have conditions or expiration dates. Who taught me that true strength isn't about controlling everything. It's about having the courage to be vulnerable with the people who love you. The months that followed brought continued healing. Rachel gradually reduced her therapy sessions, but maintained regular check-ins with Dr. Hernandez. She also began volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, using her experience to help other women trapped in cycles of fear and control. 1. Year after the trial, we held our family reunion at Martha's farm. This time, Rachel and I co-planned every detail, blending traditional elements with fresh ideas. The event was a beautiful fusion of old and new, much like our rebuilt relationship. During the storytelling hour, Rachel surprised everyone by standing up to share. "I want to tell you all a story about protection and control," she began. "About how fear can make us build walls when we should be building bridges. About how the very things we do to keep our loved ones safe can sometimes be what hurts them most." As she spoke, I looked around at our family, some nodding in recognition, others wiping away tears. Her honesty created a new kind of tradition that day, one where vulnerability was celebrated as strength. The reunion concluded with our annual family photo. This time, Rachel insisted on a special arrangement. "Evelyn," she called out as everyone gathered on the farmhouse steps, "would you stand in the center with me? I want this year's photo to show what's really at the heart of our family: forgiveness, understanding, and the courage to change." As the camera captured our smiling faces, Rachel and me at the center, surrounded by 3 generations of Wilsons, I realized that our journey from exclusion to inclusion had transformed more than just our relationship. It had shown our entire family that love isn't about perfection or protection from all harm. It's about facing life's challenges together, allowing ourselves to be imperfect, and choosing connection over control every single day. Later that evening, as the sun set over Martha's farm, Rachel and I once again found ourselves on the porch swing, watching fireflies emerge in the gathering darkness. "You know," Rachel said softly, "I used to think that keeping secrets was a form of strength, that handling everything alone made me brave. Now I understand that real courage is letting people see your weakness, trusting them with your fears." I squeezed her hand, thinking of how far we'd come. "And real family," I added, "is the people who see your weakness and love you not despite it, but because it makes you human." As we sat in comfortable silence, the sound of laughter drifting from inside the farmhouse where our family celebrated another successful reunion, I reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought us here. From that shocking text message banning me from the reunion to this moment of profound connection, we had traversed a landscape of hurt, revelation, and ultimately, healing. The Wilson family would carry the lessons of those difficult years forward, not as scars, but as wisdom hard-won through trial and error, through pain and perseverance. We had learned that family bonds, when tested by truth rather than protected by lies, become stronger than we ever imagined possible, and sometimes, the very thing we fear will destroy us becomes the catalyst for our greatest growth. 5 years had passed since that transformative family reunion, and life had settled into rhythms of genuine connection rather than careful manipulation. Rachel had become not just my daughter-in-law, but one of my closest confidants. Our weekly coffee dates, once unthinkable, were now cherished traditions. It was during one of these meetings, at our favorite cafe overlooking the town square, that Rachel shared news that would once again alter our family's trajectory. "Evelyn, I've been offered something unexpected," she said, stirring her latte thoughtfully. "The domestic violence shelter where I volunteer wants me to become their director. They're expanding into a regional center, and they think my experience, both personal and professional, makes me the ideal candidate." I studied her face, seeing the mixture of excitement and apprehension. "That's wonderful, Rachel. But something's holding you back?" She nodded. "It's a full-time position, which means less time with the children. And," she hesitated, "they want me to be the public face of the organization, to share my story openly, speak at conferences, maybe even testify before the state legislature about improving protections for vulnerable families." The implications were significant. For years, Rachel had guarded her privacy fiercely, sharing her past only within the safety of our family circle. Going public would mean exposing her history to scrutiny, potentially reopening old wounds. "What does Tom think?" I asked. "He's supportive but worried about the exposure." "After everything we went through..." She trailed off, But I understood. The trial had been grueling enough, and that was 5 years ago. I reached across the table, taking her hand. "What does your heart tell you?" Rachel's eyes welled with tears. "That this is what all the pain was for. That maybe my experience can help others avoid the mistakes I made. The isolation, the secrecy, the misguided attempts at protection." That conversation sparked a family discussion that evening. We gathered at my house, a tradition we'd maintained, monthly since the reunion of truth. Tom, Rachel, the children, now teenagers, Martha, Sarah, and several other close relatives sat in my living room, debating the implications of Rachel's potential new role. "Mom," Lucy said with the clarity of a 15-year-old who'd grown up witnessing her mother's transformation, "you always tell us that our struggles can become our strengths. Isn't this exactly what you mean?" James, now 13 and thoughtful, beyond his years, added, "And you won't be doing it alone this time. We're all here." The decision was made that night, not by Rachel alone, but by our entire family. We would support her in this new chapter, understanding that her story was now part of our collective narrative, one of resilience, redemption, and the power of truth. Rachel accepted the position, and within months the impact was profound. The shelter's expansion included innovative programs based on Rachel's insights, family communication workshops, courses on recognizing isolation tactics, and support groups for those afraid to seek help. But it was her public speaking that created the most significant ripples. Her first major address was at a national conference on family violence prevention. I sat in the front row, watching my once secretive daughter-in-law command the stage with quiet authority. "For 3 years, I pushed away the very people who could have helped me," she told the audience of social workers, law enforcement officials, and survivors. "I convinced myself that keeping my family at arm's length would keep them safe. Instead, I nearly destroyed the relationships I was trying to protect." She went on to describe our journey, the confrontation at the reunion, the difficult path to healing, and the strength we found in facing truth together. The standing ovation that followed lasted several minutes. After her speech, people lined up to speak with her. I overheard fragments of conversations. "Your story gave me hope. I've been isolating my family too. How did you find the courage to change?" That evening, as we drove home together, Rachel was quiet, processing the day's emotions. Finally, she spoke. "Evelyn, do you remember what you said to me that first Christmas after everything came out, when I was still struggling with guilt?" I thought back to that day. We had been decorating the tree at Tom's house, and Rachel had broken down, apologizing again for excluding me from so many celebrations. "I told you that guilt is only useful if it leads to growth," I recalled. "Otherwise, it's just self-punishment." "That advice changed everything for me," she said. "It helped me transform shame into purpose. And today, seeing those people respond to our story, I think I finally understand what you meant about redemption not being a destination, but a journey we take together." The following year brought more changes. Rachel's work gained national attention, leading to invitations to help shape policy on family protection services. She testified before Congress about the need for better support systems for families dealing with threats and trauma. Meanwhile, our family continued to evolve. Lucy, inspired by her mother's advocacy, began volunteering at the shelter during her summer breaks. James developed an interest in psychology, often discussing with Rachel the complexities of trauma response and family dynamics. One particularly memorable moment came during a family barbecue at Tom and Rachel's house. Lucy was showing her younger cousins a school project, a video documentary about family resilience featuring interviews with Rachel, me, and other relatives. "This is my grandmother Evelyn," Lucy's voice narrated as my image appeared on screen. "She taught our family that love isn't about protecting people from truth. It's about facing truth together." The video included footage from recent family reunions, contrasting them with photos from the years of separation. The transformation was visible not just in our relationships, but in our very postures, the way we now leaned toward each other instead of maintaining careful distance. As we watched, I noticed Rachel wiping away tears. Later, she pulled me aside, in the kitchen. "I've been thinking about writing a book," she confided. "Not just about my experience, but about our whole family's journey. About how we rebuilt trust and redefined what protection really means." The book, titled "When Protection Becomes Prison: A Family's Journey from Secrets to Strength," was published 2 years later. The dedication read, "To Evelyn, who showed me that a mother's love can unlock even the most carefully guarded heart. And to the Wilson family, who taught me that true protection means having the courage to be vulnerable together." The book tour brought Rachel and me closer than ever. We traveled together, speaking at bookstores and community centers, sharing our story of conflict and reconciliation. Often, audience members would approach us afterward with their own stories of family estrangement and the longing for healing. One evening in Chicago, after a particularly emotional event, we sat in our hotel room reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. "You know what strikes me most?" Rachel said, curled up in the armchair by the window. "How many people are living with family secrets, thinking they're protecting their loved ones when they're really building walls." I nodded, thinking of the countless stories we'd heard. Fear is a powerful motivator. It convinces us that isolation equals safety. But it's connection that truly protects us, Rachel finished. That's what I wish I'd understood sooner. Our conversation was interrupted by a FaceTime call from Lucy, now in her first year of college. "Mom, Grandma," she beamed from the screen. "I just got accepted into the peer counseling program. I wrote my application essay about our family's story and how it taught me about the importance of open communication." As we congratulated her, I marveled at how the ripples of our healing continued to expand. Lucy's generation was learning from our mistakes, approaching relationships with a wisdom we'd gained through painful experience. The book's success led to unexpected opportunities. Rachel was invited to develop training programs for social workers and law enforcement on recognizing when protection behaviors become harmful isolation. I often joined her for these sessions, offering the perspective of someone who had been on the receiving end of such behavior. During one training in Seattle, a young police officer approached us during the break. "My mother-in-law is going through something similar," he said. "My wife keeps finding reasons to exclude her from family events. I thought she was just being difficult, but now I wonder if there's something deeper going on." We spent the lunch break talking with him, sharing strategies for approaching such sensitive situations. As he left, he turned back with gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you for helping me see this differently. I think I need to have a real conversation with my wife about what's really happening." These moments, the small shifts in understanding that could transform families, became the most rewarding aspect of our advocacy work. We weren't just telling our story, we were helping others rewrite theirs. 5 years after the book's publication, on the 10th anniversary of that fateful reunion, our family gathered once again at Martha's farm. This time, the celebration included not just blood relatives, but the extended family we'd gained through our journey, therapists who'd guided us, fellow advocates who'd become friends, and even some of the federal agents who'd protected us during the trial. During the traditional storytelling hour, Rachel stood to speak. The woman who addressed the gathering bore little resemblance to the fearful daughter-in-law who had once tried to exclude me from this very event. 10 years ago, I sent a text message born of fear, she began. I thought I was protecting my family by controlling who could be close to us. Instead, I nearly destroyed the very bonds I was trying to preserve. She looked directly at me as she continued. Evelyn's courage in confronting that behavior, her insistence on truth over comfortable lies, saved more than our relationship. It saved our entire family from a legacy of secrets and isolation. As applause filled the air, I reflected on how pain had been transformed into purpose, how exclusion had evolved into expansion, and how a family torn apart by misguided protection had become a beacon for others struggling with similar challenges. That evening, as 3 generations of Wilsons mingled under the stars, sharing stories and laughter, I found myself on the familiar porch swing with Rachel once again. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" she asked quietly. "If I hadn't sent that text, if you hadn't confronted me at the reunion." I considered her question carefully. "I think about it often," I admitted. "But I've come to believe that sometimes we need to reach our breaking point before we can break through to something better." Rachel nodded slowly. "Like a fever breaking before healing can begin." "Exactly," I smiled. "And look at what's grown from that moment of crisis. Not just healing for our family, but help for so many others." We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of family all around us. Children playing, adults laughing, stories being shared. The fireflies danced in the darkness, their light seeming to pulse in rhythm with the love that now flowed freely among us. "Evelyn," Rachel said softly, "thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing past my actions to the fear beneath them, for teaching me that family isn't about perfect harmony. It's about having the courage to face discord together." I squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of our shared journey. "Thank you for having the courage to change, for showing all of us that it's never too late to choose vulnerability over control, trust over fear." As the evening wound down and families began to depart, I watched Rachel move among our relatives with easy grace, hugging, laughing, making plans for future gatherings. The transformation was complete not because the past had been erased, but because it had been integrated into a larger story of growth and redemption. Walking back to the farmhouse, I paused to look at the stars, the same stars that had witnessed our family's darkest moments and brightest triumphs. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but we would face them as we had learned to face everything. Together, with honesty, courage, and an unshakable belief in the power of family to heal even the deepest wounds. The Wilson family reunion had become more than an annual gathering. It was a testament to the truth that when we dare to confront our fears and embrace vulnerability, we create the possibility for genuine connection. And in that connection lies the truest form of protection, not from all harm, but from the isolation that magnifies every threat and diminishes every joy. As I climbed the farmhouse steps, I could hear Rachel inside, telling the story of our journey to a group of younger relatives who hadn't lived through those difficult years. Her voice carried clearly through the open windows. "And that's why we always say in our family, protection without trust is just another prison. But trust, even when it's scary, sets everyone free." I smiled, knowing that our story, once a source of pain, had become a legacy of hope, passed down through generations as a reminder that the strongest families aren't those without conflict, but those brave enough to face conflict with love. 15 years after that text message changed everything, I found myself sitting in a hospital waiting room once again. But this time, the circumstances couldn't have been more different. Rachel was in labor with her 3rd child, and the entire family had gathered to welcome the newest Wilson into the world. "Mom?" Tom said, sitting beside me with nervous energy. "Rachel wanted me to ask if you'd be in the delivery room with us. She says she needs her mothers. Both of them." The request brought tears to my eyes. Rachel's biological mother had passed away 2 years earlier, never having fully reconciled with her daughter after enabling years of abuse. In her final letter to Rachel, she'd written, "I failed to protect you as a mother should. I'm grateful. You found Evelyn, the mother you deserved all along." "Of course I'll be there," I told Tom, squeezing his hand. Hours later, As I stood beside Rachel, holding her hand through the final pushes, I marveled at the trust between us. The woman who had once orchestrated elaborate schemes to keep me at a distance now drew strength from my presence during one of life's most vulnerable moments. When little Sarah Evelyn Wilson entered the world, named for both her cousin and her grandmother, Rachel looked up at me with exhausted joy. "We did it," she whispered, and I knew she meant more than just the birth. "Yes, we did," I agreed, kissing her forehead. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital to find Rachel's room, filled with flowers and family. Lucy, now in graduate school studying family therapy, sat beside her mother's bed, holding her new sister with practiced ease. "Grandma," Lucy said, her eyes shining, "I've been thinking about my dissertation topic. I want to write about intergenerational patterns of protection and control, using our family's story as a case study, if you're all comfortable with that." Rachel and I exchanged glances. "It's come full circle, hasn't it?" Rachel said softly. "From secrets to openness, from fear to understanding, and now to academic study." Tom laughed. "Just promise you'll change our names, Lucy. I don't need my colleagues knowing about the time your mom banned Grandma from the reunion." The room filled with laughter, the kind that comes from being able to look back on pain with perspective and healing. As the weeks passed and Rachel settled into motherhood again, our relationship deepened further. We spent long afternoons in her nursery, baby Sarah sleeping peacefully while we talked about everything from childhood memories to future dreams. One particularly meaningful conversation happened on a rainy Tuesday. Rachel was folding tiny onesies while I rocked Sarah, and she suddenly stopped, holding a small pink sleeper to her chest. "Evelyn, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Last week, I found some old journals from those years when I was pushing you away. Reading them now, seeing how tortured I was, how much I was denying myself, I can hardly believe that was me." "We've all grown since then," I reminded her gently. "But you saw through it all," she continued. "Even when I was at my worst, you never stopped believing there was good in me. How did you know?" I considered her question carefully. "Because I saw myself in you," I admitted. "Not the fear of physical threats, but the fear of loss. When Tom's father died, I almost pushed everyone away too. I thought if I didn't let anyone get close, I couldn't be hurt again." Rachel's eyes widened. "I never knew that." "It was before you joined our family," I explained. "Martha helped me through it. She reminded me that love requires risk, that the pain of loss is the price we pay for the joy of connection. When I saw you struggling with the same fears, I recognized the pattern." Our conversation was interrupted by Sarah's hungry cry, but the moment stayed with me. Later that evening, I pulled out my own journals from that difficult period, reliving the emotions I'd experienced when Rachel first began excluding me. One entry from the week before the reunion read, "I feel like I'm losing my son to a woman who sees me as a threat rather than an ally. But something doesn't add up. Rachel's behavior feels deliberate, calculated, like she's playing a role she hates. What is she so afraid of? What am I not seeing?" That intuition had served me well, pushing me to look deeper rather than simply react to the hurt. Now, years later, it had become the foundation of an unshakable bond. The following month brought another milestone. Rachel's shelter celebrated its 10th anniversary of expansion. The gala event drew supporters from across the country, including several politicians who had championed legislation based on Rachel's advocacy work. As the keynote speaker, Rachel commanded the stage with a presence that still amazed me. 10 years ago, a family crisis taught me that isolation in the name of protection is a dangerous illusion, she began. Tonight, I want to honor the woman who showed me that true strength lies in vulnerability, that real protection comes from connection, not control. She gestured to where I sat with Tom and the children. Evelyn Wilson didn't just save our family. She gave me the courage to help save others. Every life we've touched through this shelter carries a piece of her wisdom. The applause was thunderous, but what moved me most was seeing Lucy mouth, "I love you, Grandma," from across the room. After the formal program, Rachel and I found ourselves on the shelter's rooftop garden, a peaceful space she'd insisted on creating, for residents to find moments of calm. "You know what's funny?" she said, looking out over the city lights. "I spent years trying to protect everyone from imaginary threats, and now I deal with real threats every day, but I'm not afraid anymore." "What changed?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "I learned that fear grows in darkness and secrecy," she replied. "Bring things into the light. Surround yourself with support, and even the most terrifying situations become manageable." 6 months later, our family faced an unexpected test of this philosophy. Tom was diagnosed with early-stage cancer, treatable, but requiring aggressive intervention. The news hit us all hard, especially Rachel, whose protective instincts immediately kicked into overdrive. I watched carefully as she processed the diagnosis, half expecting her to revert to old patterns of control and isolation. Instead, she did something remarkable. She called a family meeting within hours of leaving the doctor's office. "I need to tell you all something," she began, her voice shaking but determined. "And I need to do it right away, before fear makes me want to handle this alone." As she shared Tom's diagnosis and treatment plan, I saw nods of understanding and support rather than panic. Our family had learned to face challenges together, to draw strength from unity rather than fracture under pressure. Throughout Tom's treatment, Rachel remained open about her fears while accepting help from all of us. She created a shared calendar for medical appointments, meal deliveries, and childcare. She started a family group chat for updates and support. Most importantly, she leaned on me in ways that would have been unthinkable years earlier. "I keep wanting to push everyone away," she confessed one night as we sat in the hospital cafeteria during Tom's chemotherapy session. "The old instincts are still there, telling me to protect him by controlling everything. But you're not listening." "To those instincts," I pointed out. "No," she smiled weakly. "I'm listening to you instead, to the voice that says, 'Together is stronger than alone.'" Tom's recovery was complete by the following summer, just in time for our annual family reunion. This year's gathering held special significance, not just as a celebration of his health, but as a testament to how far we'd all come. During the traditional storytelling hour, Sarah stood up. Though only in middle school, she spoke with remarkable clarity. "I want to tell a story about my grandmother Evelyn and my mom. It's a story about how love can be stronger than fear, and how families can grow stronger through honesty, even when it hurts at first." As she recounted our journey, from her child's perspective, I realized that our story had become family lore, a parable passed down to teach essential truths about love, trust, and the courage to change. Later that evening, as the sun set over Martha's farm, I found myself surrounded by 3 generations of family. Rachel sat beside me, baby Sarah in her arms, while Lucy and James debated the merits of various graduate programs nearby. Tom, healthy and grateful, was teaching younger cousins the fine art of firefly catching. "Penny for your thoughts," Rachel asked, noticing my contemplative mood. "I was just thinking about that text message," I replied. "The one that started everything." She winced slightly. "My lowest moment." "Or perhaps your turning point," I suggested. "Sometimes our worst mistakes become our greatest teachers." Rachel shifted Sarah to her other arm and reached for my hand. "You know what I've learned most from all of this? That family isn't about blood or law or obligation. It's about choice. Every day we choose to love, to forgive, to try again. You chose to confront me instead of walking away. I chose to face my fears instead of hiding behind them. And look what those choices created. I squeezed her hand, watching fireflies begin their evening dance. A legacy, I said simply. As darkness fell and the reunion wound down, families prepared to depart with promises to stay in touch, to support each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. The Wilson family had become known not for its perfection, but for its resilience, for turning pain into purpose and fear into love. Walking back to my car, I paused to look at the farmhouse where so much had transpired over the years. The front, porch, site of countless conversations and revelations, seemed to glow with accumulated wisdom. The swing where Rachel and I had shared our first honest conversation creaked gently in the evening breeze. Lucy appeared beside me, linking her arm through mine. "Grandma, I've decided on my dissertation topic. It's not just about our family anymore. I want to study how crisis can catalyze transformation in family systems, how the worst moments can become turning points if we have the courage to face them honestly." "That sounds perfect," I told her, pride swelling in my chest. "I'm calling it When Protection Becomes Connection, a study in family resilience," she continued. "And I'm dedicating it to you and Mom, the two women who showed me that love isn't about shielding people from truth, but about helping them face it." As we walked together toward the future, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought us here. A text message meant to exclude had ultimately created deeper inclusion. A relationship fractured by fear had been rebuilt with trust. A family divided by secrets had been united by truth. The Wilson legacy was no longer about maintaining appearances or avoiding conflict. It was about having the courage to be vulnerable, the wisdom to seek understanding over judgment, and the faith that love, real love, grows stronger when tested by honesty. And sometimes, the very thing we think will destroy us becomes the catalyst for our greatest transformation. As I drove home that night, my phone chimed with a message from Rachel. "Thank you for seeing the best in me when I couldn't see it myself. Thank you for teaching our family that protection without trust is just another prison. But mostly, thank you for showing us that it's never too late to choose love over fear. You didn't just save our relationship, you gave us all a new way to be family." I smiled, typing back, "The student has become the teacher. I love you, daughter of my heart." Because that's what she had become. Not just a daughter-in-law, but a daughter in every way that mattered. And our family, once fractured by misguided protection, had become living proof that when we dare to face our fears together, we create bonds that cannot be broken. The circle was complete. From exclusion to inclusion, from control to connection, from fear to love, we had traveled the full spectrum of human relationship and emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy of all. 20 years after that pivotal family reunion, I sat in my garden on a warm spring morning, watching my great-grandchildren play while their parents, Lucy and her husband Michael, prepared for what had become our new family tradition, the annual Truth and Trust gathering. At 85, I moved more slowly now, but my mind remained sharp, filled with memories of our family's remarkable journey. The garden bloomed with roses that Rachel and I had planted together 15 years ago, each bush representing a year of our rebuilt relationship. "Great-Grandma Evelyn!" called 6-year-old Emma, Lucy's daughter, running toward me with a dandelion clutched in her small fist. "Mommy says you're going to tell the special story today, the one about the brave grandma who saved our family." I smiled, accepting the flower. "That's right, sweetheart. But remember, it's not just about one brave grandma. It's about how everyone in a family can be brave when they choose truth over fear." As Emma scampered back to her cousins, I reflected on how our family story had evolved into something larger than any of us. The Truth and Trust gathering had started as a simple addition to our reunion 5 years ago, but it had grown into a powerful tradition where family members shared their struggles openly, knowing they would find support rather than judgment. Rachel approached, her silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. At 67, she carried herself with a grace born of hard-won wisdom. "The videographer is here," she said, settling beside me on the garden bench. "Are you sure you want to do this today?" I nodded. "It's time. The whole story needs to be documented, including the part we've never shared publicly." Rachel's eyes widened slightly. "You mean—" "Yes," I confirmed. The letter. The letter in question had arrived 3 months after Rachel's breakdown and hospitalization, postmarked from a federal prison. It was from her stepfather, filled with threats and manipulation, trying to pull her back into his web of fear, even from behind bars. Rachel had hidden it from everyone, including Tom, terrified that its contents would undo all our progress. I had found it purely by accident while helping her reorganize her home office. The envelope had fallen from between some old files, and I recognized the prison postmark immediately. When I confronted Rachel about it, she broke down completely. "I couldn't let anyone know," she had sobbed. "He said he still had people on the outside, that they were watching, waiting for any sign of weakness. I thought if I just ignored it, pretended it didn't exist. You were protecting us again," I had realized, in the same way that had nearly destroyed us before. That day had marked our second major turning point. We had taken the letter to the FBI together, faced the threats as a united front, and learned that her stepfather's claims were empty, desperate attempts at control from a man who had lost all power. But more importantly, it had taught Rachel the final lesson about true protection, that even our darkest fears lose their power when shared with those who love us. Now, 20 years later, we were ready to share this last piece of our story. The videographer, a young woman named Zoe, who was actually James's daughter-in-law, set up her equipment in the shade of our old oak tree. The family gathered around, 4 generations strong, as Rachel and I prepared to tell our complete story for the first time. "Before we begin," I announced, "I want to acknowledge something. For years we've shared our journey of healing and reconciliation, but we've held back one crucial part, not out of shame, but because we weren't ready to revisit that particular pain. Today, with Rachel's blessing, we're going to tell you about the letter that almost undid everything we had rebuilt." The family leaned in, even those who had heard versions of our story many times before. Tom reached for Rachel's hand, offering silent support. Rachel took a deep breath and began. 6 months after my breakdown, when I was still fragile but beginning to heal, my stepfather sent me a letter from prison. In it, he claimed he still had associates watching our family, that he knew about Evelyn's heart medication, about the children's schools, about Tom's travel schedule. He wrote that if I ever testified against his remaining network, if I ever spoke publicly about what had happened, there would be consequences. Gasps echoed through the gathering. Lucy, now a respected family therapist, moved closer to her mother. "I hid the letter," Rachel continued, her voice steady despite the difficult memories. "I told myself I was protecting everyone by keeping this new threat secret. For 3 months, I lived in renewed fear, watching shadows, seconding guessing every decision. I started pulling back again, making excuses to skip family dinners, finding reasons to keep the children home from activities. I noticed the changes," I interjected, "the subtle return of old patterns. But this time, instead of confronting her publicly, I waited for the right moment." "She found the letter while helping me clean," Rachel explained. "And instead of anger or disappointment, she showed me something I'll never forget. Compassion for my fear and determination to face it together. I remembered that day vividly. I told her, 'Rachel, we've learned this lesson already. Secrets don't protect us. They isolate us. Whatever this threat is, we face it as a family.' That's when we took the letter to the FBI," Rachel continued. "They investigated and found that my stepfather was bluffing. He had no remaining network, no one watching us. It was all a desperate attempt to maintain control from his prison cell. Tom spoke up for the first time. What she hasn't told you is that facing this fear, sharing this burden, was what finally freed her completely. The nightmares stopped, the hypervigilance faded. She realized that truth, complete truth, was the only real protection. And that's why we started the truth and trust gatherings, Rachel added. Because every family has secrets, fears, things they think they need to handle alone. We wanted to create a space where those burdens could be shared safely. Young Emma, who had been listening intently, raised her hand as if in school. Great-Grandma, were you scared when you found the letter? I smiled at her earnestness. I was, sweetheart, but I was more scared of what would happen if we let fear control us again. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we're afraid and ask for help. The conversation continued for hours, with family members sharing their own stories of fears, faced and truths revealed. James talked about his struggle with anxiety during college and how our family's openness had helped him seek therapy. Lucy discussed her research on family systems and how our story had influenced her entire career path. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the garden, Rachel stood to make a final point. There's something else we've never shared. Publicly, she said, glancing at me for permission. I nodded. Evelyn has been keeping journals throughout this entire journey, Rachel revealed. Detailed accounts of our struggles, our healing, our transformation. We've decided to publish them, not for fame or recognition, but as a resource for other families trapped in cycles of fear and control. The announcement was met with enthusiastic support. Sarah, now a successful editor in New York, immediately offered to help with the publication process. Later that evening, after most of the family had departed, Rachel and I sat in my study, surrounded by decades of journals. Are you sure about this? She asked, running her fingers over a leather-bound notebook from the year of the reunion. Some of these entries are raw. That's exactly why they need to be shared, I replied. People need to see that healing isn't linear, that setbacks are normal, that transformation is possible even after the deepest betrayals. We spent the next several months working on the manuscript, with Lucy providing professional insights and Sarah handling the editorial process. The book, titled From Exclusion to Embrace: A Family's Journey Through Truth, was published the following year. The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in from around the world, mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law finding common ground, families recognizing their own patterns of protective isolation, individuals finding courage to confront long-held secrets. One letter particularly moved us both. It came from a young woman named Christina. Dear Evelyn and Rachel, I am the daughter-in-law who banned my mother-in-law from our family gatherings. Like Rachel, I thought I was protecting my children from her toxic influence. Reading your story, I realized I was really acting out of my own childhood trauma, projecting my fears onto a woman who only wanted to love us. Today, I called her for the first time in 3 years. We cried together on the phone for an hour. Next week, she's coming to dinner. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to choose connection over control. With gratitude, Christina, the me. Book tour became a family affair, with different generations joining us at various stops. Lucy often provided professional commentary on family dynamics, while Tom shared his perspective as the son and husband caught between two women he loved. At our final event, held in our hometown library, the room was filled with familiar faces, family, members, friends, and community members who had witnessed our journey firsthand. During the Q&A session, someone asked, "What's the most important lesson you've learned from all of this?" Rachel and I exchanged glances, years of shared understanding passing between us. That love requires courage, I began. And that protection without trust is just another form of imprisonment, Rachel continued. But mostly, we said together, having unconsciously developed this synchronized response over months of speaking engagements, that families are strongest not when they avoid conflict, but when they face it together with honesty and compassion. We signed books that evening. I noticed Martha's granddaughter interviewing elderly relatives, collecting more family stories for what she called the Wilson Archives, a digital collection of our family's history, struggles, and triumphs. Every family needs to document their journey, she explained when I asked about her project. Not just the happy moments, but the challenges too. That's where the real wisdom lives. Walking home that night, Rachel linked her arm through mine. "You know what I realized today?" she said. "Our story isn't really about you and me anymore. It's become bigger than us, a legacy of choosing truth over comfort, connection over control." I nodded, thinking of all the lives our journey had touched. "The ripples keep spreading. And they'll continue long after we're gone," she added softly. As we reached my house, we paused at the garden gate. The roses were blooming despite the evening chill, their fragrance filling the air with sweet promise. "Evelyn," Rachel said suddenly, "I need to tell you something I've never said directly." I waited, sensing the importance of the moment. "You didn't just save our family," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved me, from my fears, from my past, from the prison I had built around myself. You saw through my actions to my heart, and you loved me anyway. That's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." We embraced there in the garden, two women who had traveled from adversaries to allies, from mistrust to deep understanding, from brokenness to wholeness. Inside, I pulled out my latest journal and wrote, "Today marks 20 years since the text message that changed everything. What began as an attempt to exclude has become a movement of inclusion. What started as one family's crisis has become a beacon for others struggling with similar challenges. Rachel and I often joke that we should thank her stepfather's criminal associates for bringing us closer together, though we know the price was far too high. The truth is, we found our way to each other not because of the threats, but in spite of them. We chose love over fear, trust over control, vulnerability over protection. And in making those choices, day after day, year after year, we didn't just heal our relationship. We created a new paradigm for what family can be. Not perfect, not without conflict, but real, honest, and unbreakably connected by the very struggles that once threatened to tear us apart. Tomorrow, Emma starts kindergarten. She asked if I would walk her to school, like you walked Mommy when she was scared. I said yes, of course. Because that's what family does. We walk together through the scary moments, holding hands, facing forward, choosing trust over fear every single time. The circle continues to expand, the legacy grows, and love, true love, proves itself stronger than any force that tries to divide us. As I closed the journal, I smiled, knowing that somewhere, in some other family, another grandmother and daughter-in-law were beginning their own journey from conflict to connection. And perhaps, if they were lucky, they would learn more quickly than we did that the strongest families aren't those without secrets, but those brave enough to bring their secrets into the light of love. 25 years after that fateful text message, I found myself preparing for what would likely be my final family reunion. At 90, each gathering felt more precious, each moment weighted with deeper meaning. The Wilson family had grown exponentially, 5 generations now, with news that 2 more great-great-grandchildren were on the way. The morning of the reunion, Rachel arrived early to help with preparations. At 72, she moved with the careful grace of someone who had learned to cherish each step. We worked side by side in Martha's farmhouse kitchen, now run by Martha's daughter Jennifer, preparing the traditional dishes that had sustained our family through joy and sorrow. "I have something to show you," Rachel said softly, pulling a worn envelope from her purse. "I've been waiting for the right moment, Inside was a letter, the paper aged and creased from repeated handling. "I wrote this the night before the reunion. When I banned you," she explained. "I never sent it, but I kept it all these years as a reminder." With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter. "Dear Evelyn, I'm about to do something unforgivable. By the time you read my text tomorrow, you'll hate me, and you should. You've been nothing but loving to me, to Tom, to our children. You've welcomed me into your family with open arms, and I'm about to repay that kindness with cruelty. I want you to know that every time I push you away, it feels like cutting off my own arm. You're the mother I always dreamed of having. Your wisdom, your warmth, your unconditional love, they terrify me because I can't bear the thought of losing you. So I'm pushing you away first. It's cowardly and wrong, but I'm so scared, Evelyn. There are things I can't tell you, dangers I can't explain. I'm trying to protect you the only way I know how, even though I know it will break both our hearts. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. Maybe someday you'll understand, though I can't imagine how you could ever forgive me. Rachel." Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. "Why show me this now?" Rachel's eyes glistened. "Because today marks exactly 25 years since that text message. A quarter-century of healing, growth, and love. I wanted you to see that even in my darkest moment, even when I was making the worst mistake of my life, the love was there. It was always there. We embraced in that kitchen where so many family moments had unfolded, the letter pressed between us like a bridge between past and present. The reunion that day was extraordinary. The Truth and Trust session had evolved into a multi-generational panel discussion. Lucy, now a renowned family therapist and author, moderated as different generations shared their perspectives on family, forgiveness, and the courage to change. Emma, now in graduate school studying social work, presented her thesis on intergenerational patterns of protection and trust, using our family as a case study. The Wilson family model, she explained to the assembled relatives, demonstrates that confronting painful truths with compassion can transform destructive patterns into sources of strength. James, who had followed Rachel into advocacy work, announced the establishment of the Wilson Family Foundation, dedicated to helping families navigate complex relationships and heal from trauma. "Our story isn't unique," he said, "but our response to crisis can be a model for others." As the formal program concluded, Tom stood to make an announcement. "Mom, Rachel, could you come up here, please?" We joined him at the front of the gathering, curious about what he had planned. 25 years ago, our family faced a crisis that could have destroyed us, he began. Instead, through the courage and wisdom of these two remarkable women, we found a path to something stronger. Today, we want to honor that journey. Sarah stepped forward, unveiling a bronze plaque that would be installed at the entrance to Martha's farm. The Wilson Family. Truth and Trust, center dedicated to Evelyn Wilson and Rachel Morgan Wilson, who taught us that protection without trust is just another prison, but truth embraced with love sets everyone free. May all who gather here find the courage to choose connection over control. The applause was thunderous, but what moved me most was seeing the youngest generation, children who had grown up with our story as part of their heritage, understanding its significance in their own lives. That evening, as the sun set over the farm, I found myself surrounded by family on the porch where so many crucial conversations had taken place. Rachel sat beside me, our hands clasped in comfortable companionship. "Grandma Evelyn," called out one of the teenagers, "tell us the story one more time, the real version, with all the details." I smiled, looking around at the eager faces. "Which part do you want to hear?" "All of it," came the chorus of replies. So I began, as I had so many times before, but this time with the weight of a quarter-century of perspective. When my daughter-in-law banned me from our annual family reunion, By text message, I knew I'd reached my breaking point. As I spoke, I watched the younger generations absorb not just the events, but the lessons woven through them. They understood that our story wasn't about a single dramatic confrontation, but about the daily choice to face fear with love, to meet control with trust, to transform pain into purpose. When I finished, silence fell over the gathering. Then, slowly, others began to share their own stories. Moments when they had chosen vulnerability over protection. Times when they had faced difficult truths rather than maintaining comfortable lies. Lucy's daughter stood up, holding her own infant son. "I want to make a promise," she said, her voice strong and clear. "I promise to raise my children with the lessons you've taught us, to show them that real strength comes from admitting weakness, that true protection means trusting others to share our burdens, and that family isn't about perfection, it's about having the courage to grow together." One by one, family members made their own promises, commitments to honesty, to facing fears together, to choosing connection over control in their own relationships. As the evening wound down, Rachel and I remained on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the darkness as we had so many times before. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't confronted me that day?" she asked softly. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I believe we would have found our way to truth eventually. The love was always there, waiting for us to be brave enough to trust it." "I have something else for you," Rachel said, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out a simple silver locket. "Open it." Inside were 2 tiny photographs. One of us at that first reunion after the confrontation, still wary but trying, and one from today, our arms around each other, surrounded by the family. We had helped heal. "From exclusion to embrace," she said simply. I clasped the locket around my neck, feeling its weight settle against my heart. "Our story isn't finished yet," I said. "Every time someone chooses truth over fear, every time a family faces their challenges together instead of apart, our legacy grows." As if on cue, my phone chimed with a message. It was from Christina, the daughter-in-law who had written to us years ago after reading our book. "Celebrating 10 years of reconciliation with my mother-in-law today. Thank you for showing us the way. The ripples of your courage continue to spread." I showed the message to Rachel, and we smiled together in the darkness. The next morning, before everyone departed, we gathered for one final tradition, the reading of the family principles that had emerged from our journey. Truth spoken. With love heals. Secrets kept in fear destroy. Protection without trust becomes control. Control breeds resentment. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the foundation of genuine connection. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It creates space for a better future. Family isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about facing it together with courage and compassion. As cars pulled away and the farm returned to its peaceful quiet, Rachel and I sat in the kitchen one last time, sharing tea and memories. "You know what I'm most proud of?" I asked her. "What's that?" "That our lowest moment became our greatest teacher. That the pain we caused each other became the catalyst for healing not just our relationship, but countless others." Rachel nodded, her eyes distant with memory. "Sometimes I still can't believe how far we've come. From that text message to this, a legacy of love and truth that will outlive us both." That night, alone in my room, I made my final journal entry. Today marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The Wilson family story, which began with an attempt to exclude, has become a testament to the power of inclusion. What started as one grandmother's refusal to accept rejection has grown into a movement that touches lives far beyond our own. Rachel and I often reflect on the irony that her attempt to protect through isolation led to a connection deeper than either of us could have imagined. We've learned that the strongest families aren't those without secrets or conflicts, but those brave enough to bring their struggles into the light of love. As I prepare to pass the torch to younger generations, I do so with complete confidence. They understand what took us so long to learn, that love requires courage, that protection without trust is just another form of control, and that the truth, when faced together, has the power to transform even the deepest wounds into wisdom. The why. Fireflies still dance in Martha's garden, the porch swing still creaks in the evening breeze, and somewhere, another family is beginning their own journey from brokenness to wholeness. Our story goes on, not in the chapters we write, but in the lives we've touched and the hearts we've helped to heal. And perhaps that's the greatest legacy of all. Not that we were perfect, but that we were brave enough to be imperfect together, choosing love over fear, truth over comfort, and connection over control, one difficult conversation at a time. I closed the journal and looked out at the stars, the same stars that had witnessed our family's darkest moments and brightest triumphs. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities for growth. But tonight, I rested in the knowledge that what we had built, through pain, through courage, through unwavering commitment to truth, would endure long after we were gone. The Wilson legacy wasn't about a single dramatic moment or a perfect resolution. It was about the daily choice to face our fears together, to trust in love's power to heal, and to believe that even the most painful exclusion could become an invitation to deeper connection.